Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Julie Shields-Rutina, and I am the Director of College Planning, Education, and Training here at MEFA. And tonight, the topic is, this is a Q&A with college admissions experts. And I'm thrilled to have an expert panel, and I'm going to let them tell you a little bit more about themselves, but we have Essie Asare, who is the Director of Admissions at UMass Chan Medical School, Ryan Forsyth, Vice President of Enrollment Management at Worcester State University, Jennifer Walker, Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Brandeis University, Ebony Clinton Brown, Dean of Undergraduate Admissions at Northeastern University, Julie Lovelace, Director of First Year Admissions at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Stephanie Wells, who's the Director of College Relations. And Stephanie will be handling some of the questions in the Q&A. And we'll talk a little bit about that before we get started. So here are some logistics. We are recording this. So tomorrow we will send you links to both the recording and to well, we don't have many slides, so mostly the recording. And if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A, and I'm sure that a lot of your questions will be answered from the panelists as we go along, but so you don't forget it, you can put it there and we will definitely get to some of your questions by the end. If you need to, closed captioning, you can hit the live transcript button and you'll be able to see the words that we speak across the screen. A few words about MEFA. MEFA is a state authority, and it was created here in Massachusetts in 1982 to help families plan, save, and pay for college. And briefly, we have the state's college savings programs. We also have low-cost loans for families who need that type of private financing to pay for college. And then everything else we do is about providing guidance to families, to school counselors, to colleges, all about planning, saving, and paying for college. So please visit MEFA often and all through your process, and we're here as a resource for you and to help. So with that, I am going to, and these are ways that you can get in touch with us. I can share this at the end again. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can better see your panelists. And I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about, your institution, and then we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty of questions. So I guess I'll start with you, Ebony.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight with you all. My name is Ebony Clinton Brown. I'm the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions at Northeastern University. Northeastern is a global research university with over a century of experience-driven education. We have undergraduate campuses here in Boston, where I'm located, also Oakland, California, and London, England. At Northeastern, we have a commitment to experiential learning, which means that we provide all of our students countless opportunities to get real-world experience and really combine that with their classroom education. There are 4 pillars of experiential learning that we focus on at the university. First is our signature co-op program. It's probably what we're most well known for across the country. Students in our co-op program have the opportunity to spend 6 months of full-time work experience in an area really aligned with their academic area. Students can do this up to 3 times by the time they graduate and end up graduating with 18 months of work experience. We're also a Tier 1 research university, so that's certainly an experience and opportunity for all of our students. We have tons of global experiences where students can do international co-ops. Our students can do, research opportunities abroad, as well as our other final pillar is the pillar of service. So by the time all of our 18,000 students graduate across our 280 different majors, we find that they have resumes, but also degrees. And it's really because of all the experience and all the opportunities they have had through our educational motto. We believe it offers a really distinct experience in their undergraduate education. Julie, earlier you had asked us, I think, to talk maybe about just trends that are happening or anything that's top of mind. Did you want to say as well?
Sure. Yeah. If you have anything like that, please.
Yeah. So I think if I'm thinking of kind of trends and some of the conversations we're having now, I think that many of us are actually simply waiting for the impact of the pending Supreme Court case, right? So we know that race and admissions is being reviewed, and we can expect that decision to come in the spring. And so I think many of us across the country are waiting for that to see, we know that's going to change what we're doing and how our process works in some way or another. And not only that, but athletics and legacy admissions, and also, VIP as well. So I think that's probably top of mind. I think the other thing that really is at top of mind is as we are kind of entering this pandemic, I think that, as we are welcoming students to our college campuses, we are aware that the students that are seniors this year were freshmen, right, when the pandemic started, and they are coming to us, to our communities, with all types of, social, emotional, and mental health needs, and how are we prepared to support them on our college campuses. So lots of questions surrounding that, or what are the resources needed for our students to not only survive on our college campuses, but also thrive.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving that view of, what's going on in your mind and everyone in your office. I think that's great. So Julie, I'll turn to you from WPI.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. My name is Julie Lovelace. I serve as the Director of First Year Admissions at WPI. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I can tell you a little bit about WPI. You can probably guess from that word polytechnic that we have a pretty narrow focus at WPI, and we really focus in on STEM and business majors. So anything within the science, technology, engineering, math, social science, and business realms is available to study at WPI. We're known as leaders in robotics engineering in particular. We were the first university to offer a degree in that, and it's a pretty unique, interesting program. Our educational philosophy is a little bit similar to Northeastern in terms of that experiential learning, except that at WPI, it takes the form of project-based learning. Of course, you can do co-ops at WPI, and I'm sure you can do projects at Northeastern, but that's kind of our differentiator. So students will do projects throughout their time at the university, within their major, outside their major, connected to classes, disconnected from classes. But our signature project is really our global project, which students typically do in their junior year. We provide every student a stipend of up to $5,000 to be able to do a project in another country. And it's really cool to see, they might work on reducing single-use plastic silverware in Hong Kong. They might work on a way to alert deaf communities when there's a wildfire in Australia. The projects are really hands-on. They're really impactful to the communities that our students are engaging with. And they're helping our students build a resume so that by the time they graduate, they have a lot of content to share with employers. Great return on investment with average starting salaries over $70,000 a year, and the option to do a combined BS-MS program in most of our majors, which will take just 5 years instead of the traditional 4+2 for a master's. I don't know if I have a ton of trends, but something I've been noticing lately is just that I think it's getting harder to predict what is going to happen with college admissions. When I applied to college, it was pretty easy to make my list of, reach and target and safe universities, but there's been a lot of changes. And so hopefully we'll get the chance to touch on some of those things that have been happening and making it a little bit more unpredictable for families lately.
Thank you for bringing that up. And yes, that will be great that we can weave that into the conversation. I'm sure a lot of students are thinking about that, families too. Thank you. Jennifer.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here tonight. So I'm Jen Walker, the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Brandeis University. I've been with Brandeis for about 15 years now and have served at 2 other institutions previously. I would tell you, so to know Brandeis is actually to understand the history of Brandeis and what brought it to be. And that's usually where we start our story, but we'll keep it a very brief one tonight. So when Brandeis was founded in the late 40s, quotas were legal in this country, and it was okay to limit the sort of types of students or limit students by their race, ethnicity, religion, and that was all considered legal. So folks from the Jewish community got together and decided to found a college where they would admit anyone who was admissible, regardless of their background. And so while every school that's here today and really in the country does that, that was part of our founding and really the reason that Brandeis was founded to begin with. And so that ethos and that character and that giving back very much continues today, a true kind of deep-seated value in the roots of the Jewish tradition. Although Brandeis is a non-sectarian institution, we are about 10 miles west of Boston. We are also a tier 1 research university. What makes us fairly distinct is our size. So for a research institution, we are 3,700 undergrads. So 3,700 is not necessarily small in the realm of all colleges and universities, but for the type of schools in this particular category, we lean more medium. The pillars that Brandeis is founded on include a reverence for learning, so learning for the acquisition of knowledge and not just a grade. The belief in a healthy discourse, albeit a friendly one, but we don't need to agree, though we do need to talk and learn from each other to move forward. And then a commitment to healing and repairing the world. And you will find that a lot of students who find Brandeis appealing also connect with the mission for social justice. We are a very residential campus. Our students are living on or around campus. A 4-year institution and not so much a commuter school. Students are doing research both in the sciences and in our sort of social science realm, or even in the arts, or doing hands-on work as well. We are a very diverse community, which I'm sure is true of a lot of the schools here, bringing 20% of our population from countries outside of the US, and then students from all over the US as well. So I would encourage all of you who are likely from Massachusetts to get your feet on all of the campuses here. We're probably close-ish to home for many of you, and we'd love to welcome you. And then if I'm being really honest as to what is on my mind right now, we release our first-year decisions, so like admitting our class, in a matter of days. So I'm thrilled to be here with you all tonight, but that is truly what I am thinking about. It is the most exciting thing we do, and it is upon us. So happy to talk to you all tonight.
Thanks, Jen. Ryan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Forsyth. I am the Vice President for Enrollment at Worcester State University. Great to be with you tonight. Worcester State is a medium-sized public institution. We offer 4-year degrees, and we are located in the city of Worcester. We're in a residential neighborhood, which is in walking distance to city resources and easy access to Boston on the train. We are the home of Major Plus, which is the academic framework at our university that assures that all graduates leave the university having completed 2 academic programs in the same amount of time, in the same 4 years, and at the same cost of a student attending another institution, which makes our graduates very qualified for whatever the endeavors they want to go into after they graduate. So we're really, really glad to be with you and to represent some of the public institutions that exist throughout the Commonwealth and New England. Nationwide, I'd say right now, there's a whole bunch of things going on. Ebony and Julie and others have mentioned all kinds of dramatic things that are happening in higher education. And I would say that as you are entering, or your child is entering, the college search process, one of the things to know about 2023 that is different than perhaps when you went to college or when your older child went to college is that in 2023, there's a lot of shifts within throughout the country in population. Believe it or not, there's fewer and fewer people your age in New England, which means more opportunity for you. Because whether you are trying to apply to a college here in New England, where our colleges are looking for you to enroll, or you're looking to go further, down the Eastern Seaboard or across to the West Coast, the geographic diversity that you provide to these colleges all across the country means that you're more desirable than anyone before you. And so this is an exciting time for young people in New England. You should don't stress, don't worry. We're going to walk you through it tonight. And when you're done, you'll know that you are really in a great place this year and in future years to enroll in the college that's right for you. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Ryan. And Essie. I'm so glad we have a representative, you, for graduate schools and the medical school specifically. So go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So good evening, everyone. My name is Essie Asari, and I'm the Director of Admissions at the T.H. Chan School of Medicine at UMass Chan Medical School, formerly known as UMass Medical. We actually received a transformative.
Oh, looks like we have a little bit of a technical difficulty. All right, well, you know what we might do? We might keep going and maybe we'll break so that Essie can come back and introduce herself. All right, let me do that. So I'm going to have you start us off, Julie. And so my question for you, and we took these questions, these are questions that MEFA has received from families. Oh, there you are, Essie. All right.
Have to be one technical issue here. My computer just let me know that I had to restart. So hopefully it will not kick me out of Zoom. I just had a Zoom update. Let's hope that this won't happen again while I'm speaking. Okay, so as I was saying, I am the Director of Admissions at the T.H. Chan School of Medicine at UMass Chan Medical. And we had just received a virtual gift from the Morningside Foundation. And with that, we were able to change our name, and that was really exciting for us. Now, one of the things that I definitely wanted to point out was that we are the only state-run medical school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that is huge, having the distinction of being that. And we are actually listed as in the top 10 for primary care in the nation, so by US News and World Report. So you can see this homegrown local medical school that is serving its population, serving its backyard, and has national recognition for some of the programs that we offer. So we are open to both Massachusetts residents and non-residents. We also are open to Canadians as of last year, DACA, asylees, and refugees. And we have increased our class sizes over the past few years. Now, I've been at UMass Med for just slightly over 2 years. And we have a class of 175 first years this year. We are going to increase to 200. So as much as I'm excited, my heart is also palpitating because it is exciting always when we are able to grow. We have about 9 students that we bring in every year into our combined MD PhD program, which is strongly research focused. And we also have an MD program with an MBA through our sister school, part of the UMass system out of UMass Lowell. So we have partnerships within the UMass family as well. For those who are interested, for example, in public health, they can go through UMass Amherst in order to get an MD and then also follow up with a public health, a master's in public health as well. So we have those opportunities for our medical students to really, how should I say, enhance their programs through tracks and other programs and pathways. We just came, I should say we just promoted our new curriculum, which is our VISTA curriculum. And that was taking our old academic program, which had 2 pillars, the first being our biomedical sciences and the second being our clinical core courses. And we added a third, which was health system sciences as a third pillar. That allows us to really show our medical students what their patients are going through. So in terms of understanding and navigating the healthcare system. So that helps them be a little bit more empathetic. So they know the kind of social determinants to health that are out there. and also helps them, I think, be better healthcare providers. So UMass is looking at ways to really enhance our curriculum to give the best education possible, and also to give our medical students the opportunity to create and to customize their educational programs through pathways. And then our track, one of the tracks is the population-based urban rural community health program. We have a partnership with Bay State Health out of Springfield, and that's one of our sister campuses. And you may have heard in the news that we're looking to expand to Leahy to have a third, like our second. So we're looking for, we're looking at hopefully getting our permission to go ahead and start recruiting for the first class coming into our Leahy program, which will be giving us additional room for those interested in leadership and sort of administration within the health system field. So we are excited about that. Hopefully that will be coming shortly, and we will be looking to recruit for the class of 24. We also have an accelerated MD program that is recruiting its first cohort this year. And the accelerated MD program is a 3-year program with those looking to go into internal medicine, family medicine, and pediatrics being the pilot programs, and then hopefully expanding it to other specialties as we go along. So again, always moving forward, trying to find new creative ways of teaching healthcare and getting our students out there into different markets, so to speak. Now, in terms of trends that are out there, this is a tough one for us because, as you know, and I know this was mentioned earlier by Ebony, that we are looking at a decision coming from the Supreme Court that has to do with diversity and ethnicities in admissions. The problem here, though, is that if you look at the landscape of the medical industry as a whole, there isn't a whole lot of diversity in there. So we are now facing a catch-22 because as of the last AAMC conference, which is basically the governing body for medical schools, we were talking about how we're looking to make greater efforts as medical practitioners and medical educators to enhance and to grow. And now we're going to have a roadblock in terms of how that's going to happen. And so we are hoping against hope that things don't really come in the way that is going to make it harder for us to try and increase the diversity, because we know that there are so many different social determinants of health already that are preventing some communities from accessing healthcare. And there is also, for example, in some communities, a trust issue. And so having someone that looks like them, having someone that comes from the same background, having someone that understands what their needs are, is a way that we can promote better health for our communities. And so we're hoping that that is not going to come to pass, so that we can hopefully really work towards increasing the number of healthcare providers that come from diverse fields.
Thank you, Essie. Yes, it's very important. Thank you. All right, so now, Julie, I'm going to turn to you and I'm going to take us back and say, can we just start at the beginning? And how should a student begin thinking about the admissions process? And a couple of things on my mind are, how to decide where to apply, how to create a list that's balanced, for no other word, I'll call it. And then if someone has a certain interest or skill or talent and they want to incorporate that, how do they do that as well? So all of that, that's a lot, but
Great.
Right.
Yeah, so at the beginning, and I don't think there's like a perfect age or time to consider the beginning, but earlier is always better. The process is a matchmaking process, but the good news is that there are going to be dozens and dozens and dozens of matches for every student. I think oftentimes students get hung up on a certain dream school. And the reality is that there are likely dozens of dream schools for them out there. So really, when they're starting the process, thinking about 3 types of fit, I'm sure all of my colleagues have talked about this before, but of course there's the academic fit. But there's also social fit as well as financial fit. And all of these types of fits are what families should be considering when they're really beginning this conversation. I think there are some students who know exactly what types of majors or exactly what singular major they're looking for in a college, and that really helps narrow down their list. I think there are other students who like a lot of the different classes that they're taking at the high school level, and they're going to want to apply to universities that have a more broad range of majors so they can kind of figure things out from there. When it comes to social fit, I think students know themselves socially the best. They're going to know, what type of atmosphere on a college campus is important to them. Are they wanting to be at a school where athletics are a huge part of the student body, or Greek life is a huge part of the student body? Are they wanting to be at a college campus where there's a lot of people from a lot of different places around the country? All of these things are ways that students can think about their own social fit. I guarantee every university that a high school student is looking at is going to have lots of clubs to consider joining. So I never think it's worth anchoring on, oh, my future university must have a radio station, because universities have so many clubs that students can get involved in. But the financial fit is a big piece of the puzzle as well. College costs have not slowed down in the past few years. And so I think having a conversation between the family and the student applying to college about what is really feasible to the family is going to help avoid heartbreak later, making a smart list of schools, really digging deep into kind of scholarships and financial aid that those schools offer is going to be helpful. I also think that I personally think that visiting college campuses, even if it's colleges that aren't really on your radar, I think that's such a helpful way for students to start narrowing down that kind of list of characteristics that they're looking for. I know I 100% thought I was going to be the type of student that wanted to go to an urban campus in a big city. And after I visited 2 of those, I realized that I'm from a small town and I wasn't ready to make a huge leap like that. So I think even allowing your students as sophomores or as juniors to get on some college campuses and really envision what they like and what they don't like. My tip to parents out there, and it's something I remember from my college search, my parents told me, make sure you ask a lot of questions on your college tour, or else we will. And that put the fear of God into me that my parents were going to embarrass me. So that was really helpful for me to be proactive and engaged in the process. I think that making your college list, like I said, is getting harder and harder. Take advantage of your resources, which are school counselors, friends and family members who've been through the process recently, but also of your admissions offices. Most of the people who work in admissions are extroverted. They want to help you. They're not going to be over the top salespeople. They really just know their institution well, and they can really represent the things that you need to know about the institution. And there are some pretty sophisticated and nuanced questions that families get into, and I think that's really helpful. The more you know at the outset, the better you'll feel about putting the application in.
Great advice, great tips, especially for the students. I'll ask you, Ryan, do you want to expand a little bit just on, the cost piece, the cost of college, how much families should think about that in the admissions decision? Anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, so, well, let's start with the fact that college is expensive. It is silly expensive. It is scary expensive. And today you hear a lot of talk about the value of college, the value of higher education. Like, is a college degree worth it? Well, I would present to you that college is an investment in yourself. So there's going to be some cost. We hope that a lot of that cost is covered by financial aid and scholarships, and that brings that cost down. But the reality is that many college students pay some portion, either upfront or through borrowing, to pay for college. And so understanding that by getting a higher education and investing in yourself, that little bit of payment may be worth it. But if you're investing in yourself, right, like what makes a good investment? Well, it's paying a little and receiving a lot, right? You know, buy low, sell high, unless it's a short sale. And that's not this presentation. But among the many factors that help you decide on where to go to college, cost is important to many families. So you're going to make your college decision based on lots of things, right? Julie just talked about a whole bunch of things that are going to help you make that list and make that final decision about where to go. But the cost is going to be one of those things, right? You can fall in love with that campus that's on the other side of the country, that's the perfect fit for you. And it's got, what was it, Julie, the club, the favorite club that you want. But if it's going to cost $75,000 a year to go there, well, is that doable? Is that reasonable? So cost comes into the consideration for almost all families, for many families. The goal for you is to find a college or university where you are comfortable with the amount that you're paying while also receiving that high quality education and feeling confident in the education that you receive that is likely to increase your potential in the future, increase your likelihood for success in whatever you define as success. At this point in your college search, if you are the family of a sophomore or a junior in high school, or maybe you are a less traditional age student, but you're thinking college in 1 or 2 or 3 years, you shouldn't count out a college early in the search simply because of the price that you see when you do a Google search. So if you do a Google search, you will see that, Nichols College costs, I'm going to guess here, $55,000. Well, $55,000 for college is a lot. No, very few families have $55,000 just hanging out in the dresser drawer waiting to pay for college. But the reality is that very few students actually pay $55,000 to go to Nichols College. Most students pay less because that's where scholarships and financial aid come in. So it is entirely possible that the college that looks expensive at the beginning could provide a great deal of financial aid and make itself inexpensive. And it's also equally possible that the inexpensive college could offer you little amount of financial aid, which makes them perhaps equally as affordable. Ultimately, you will decide what is affordable and what's not affordable. And that will be one of the factors, certainly, that helps you make your decision about where to go to college, in addition to all the other things you'll consider.
And if
Thank
you
you.
mind, I would like to jump in on the side for graduate schools. And
Yes.
thanks for that. You made some really, really great points with that. And again, it is an investment. So when I'm talking about graduate schools, and then I'm going to be using medical schools as part of the platform for what I'm going to say, graduate programs can be astronomically expensive. It's for some programs, it is painfully so. And so when we talk about cost, you have to do your research. So when Julie was talking about what you're looking to do for the undergrads, looking for the right fit, financial fit is also part of it, but you have to do your research. You need to look at the schools that you're applying to, especially at the graduate level. And they could be a medical school, a law school, whatever the case may be, traditional graduate programs. You need to do your research to figure out, number one, what program am I going into? Because undecided is not really an option at the graduate level, where you can go in and really figure out what you want to do. You're going into a program where you can go undecided in terms of specialties and figure that out down the road, but you really want to know what you're getting into. But when you're looking at the cost of the institutions, just as Brian mentioned, we have those schools that are highly expensive that may have scholarships that can bring your costs down even at the graduate level, or they may be some programs that are less expensive and could be equitable at the end of the day. And then there are those who are very lucky in that there are some programs at the graduate level where they pay you to go to college to get your graduate degree or to get your medical degree. So for some programs, for example, MD PhDs at TH Chan, they don't pay to go. They are paid for their research. They are paid so everything, the costs are covered. So as you're looking at your programs, research those. There are some traditional, for example, I do know when I was working at a different institution, our graduate programs for engineering got stipends that actually made it less of a burden on them financially in terms of how to finance their education. So you have to do the research, you have to do the work, and then you have to figure out what is it worth to me and can I then manage it? Because also with the graduate programs, you may not be able to get that second job based on, or that first job based on what the program is. So you have to balance those things out as well, but you have to do the research.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you this, Jen. I know that Julie mentioned campus visits, but can you help us dive in a little bit deeper and talk about all the ways students can interact with you at the college, with all of you at colleges? And, you know, when Julie mentioned questions, students should ask a lot of questions. Talk about what kinds of questions should they be asking to help them make the decisions?
Sure. So there are what I might call a ridiculous amount of ways you can find out information about colleges. And so I started thinking about what that list would be. And then as an admission professional, where do I really want you to look? Because the internet is a vast space, y'all, and it has a lot of facts and it has many opinions. So I do think visiting a university or college's website to find information is your best place to start. We did have a question come in that asked about, where exactly on a website would I look to find out what colleges are looking for in an applicant? The admission page so every college and university, undergraduate admissions has its own, not just page, but its own sort of mini website within the college and university's website. Many places will in fact tell you what they're looking for. Some may call it out more specifically. So on the Brandeis site, we're actually pretty transparent about the items we're looking for kind of beyond your academic achievements in the classroom. And for some places that might be a little bit harder to find. The other question was, and then where do we go to find out if it's a social fit? I do think that is harder to do through a website. And I would dare say that it's probably no one location where you would find that on a college's website. And some of that will come back to your student and what is a good social fit for your student and what they're looking for. Many institutions put out a lot of social media posts and a lot of video that you can, watch small clips of that I think can help you get a feel of the character of a place that might be a little bit better or feel more authentic than reading words and looking at pictures, because no one puts the ugly pictures on the website or in the view books, right? Visiting the school in person, and I couldn't agree with Julie more. Even if you're starting a college search, to go and visit a school that you're near. We are lucky in that we have tons of both private, public, community college, graduate schools in Massachusetts. And folks in admissions, you don't have to tell us that you don't want to go there. You can just come and visit. Everyone is welcome. We will all be really kind. And you can use it as a visit to a place that's local to just get a sense of what a college visit is like and to help you think about what questions you would ask. You can go on a formal visit at places where you would take a tour or do an information session. You can generally do one or both. Most places learned how to do that online when we suddenly had to during the pandemic. And many institutions have continued to offer that. So yes, we have lots of schools in Massachusetts. If you decide you want to go to a school in California, there is likely a way for you to do a virtual visit with that school from the comfort of your own home, very much like tonight. And they will be happy to entertain you. Schools often also host events on campus. So I know you might feel hesitant to fill out a form on a website to tell them you're interested because we all send you so much information to begin with. But the truth is, you know, if you fill out a form on a website and we know you're sort of more genuinely interested in learning more, instead of just getting the stuff we send to everyone, you may in fact get invited to events in your hometown. Many schools will do that. So schools that are not in Massachusetts might be hosting an event near where you live or in the Boston metro area, Worcester metro. So you may think about just filling out those forms anyway. You can attend events on college campuses. College campuses are really cool places. If you're into athletics, that you can go and watch a sporting event. If you like theater, there's tons of theater happening on college campuses. If you like artwork, I mean, plug for Brandeis, we have an art museum on our campus, right? You can go and listen to orchestras. There's a lot you can do to just experience a school that doesn't have to be formally through the admissions office. You also will likely be invited to or have college fairs that are hosted in your either in your school specifically or regionally. So this is where we all will line up behind a table and hand out brochures, but there will be representatives either from the college campuses or alums from our college, or sometimes both, who will be able to answer your questions in a very casual setting. And many of us here on this webinar or folks in our offices also visit high schools, mostly in the fall, sometimes in the spring. And so you would want to check with your guidance office or college counseling office, depending on what your school calls it, but to see what colleges and universities are visiting. You have an opportunity, again, to go and sit down with someone who may very well read your application and ask them questions. Okay, what questions to ask? I got down an hilarious rabbit hole before this webinar because I asked the internet this question. And I mean, first of all, there is no one specific question that any one person should ask, because if you are doing a college search that is meaningful to you and what you're looking for, those questions have to be important to you. I'm going to give you 5 categories that I think you should think about when you are kind of mentally stepping through what might be important to you and thinking about what you're going to ask colleges. And then you can consult the internet on what it thinks you should ask us. There's plenty of opinions out there. Generally speaking, you categorically will want to ask something about academics. Do they have your major? You know, how many hours a week are you spending studying? Is there research opportunities? Things in the academic category that matter to you. Social life. What if folks do for fun, right? Is everyone studying all the time? Are there fraternities and sororities? Are there not? Do you want them? Do you not? Is, you know, game day Saturday a big thing? You want to think about services. So do you need accommodations? Is mental health counseling important? Tutoring, physical fitness, and what kind of facilities are on campus? Think about those things that matter and are important to you. I would encourage you to ask those. Housing and food. What's it like where I live, and what is the food like, and sort of how do I get it? How does that all work? And then paying for it, which Ryan talked a little bit about. But I also want to mention that you will find calculators on all of our websites. So our financial aid offices also have pages on all college and university websites that will allow you resources to put in some of your family income information and get a general sense of what it might cost you to go to school there. It is a ballpark, it is an estimate, but it helps you as a jumping off point to start to get a sense of that before even having to ask any human that question. Financial aid websites would also be where you would find information about scholarships that the universities and colleges offer. I know someone had asked that online, and external scholarships is something that you can consult the internet on. It's a bit of work to work for external scholarships, but they do exist, and you can find vast lists of them as well. So that's my 2 cents on that topic.
Thank you, Jen. And Ebony, I'm going to go straight to you. We get lots of questions about testing. So can you talk about standardized testing and the fact that more and more colleges are considering themselves test optional?
or standardized testing, which I know is everyone's favorite topic, right? So what is test optional? I think we can start there. So test optional really allows students the choice of whether to submit their standardized testing to colleges and universities at the time of application. When I say standardized testing, I mean either the ACT or the SAT. So in addition to submitting, say, their common application, students are submitting their testing scores, they're submitting their transcripts and any of the other pieces that are materials that will make an application complete. Test optional allows the student the choice to submit that test. And if they submit that test, and that becomes part of the application record and is considered. If they don't, that is fine. Colleges have said that they can still make an admissions decision without that information. So test optional has been around for decades. Even like pre-pandemic, there were about 1,000, even a little bit more, of colleges and universities that already had test optional policies in place. In 2018, I think it was University of Chicago, which was like the first top 10 university in the country to go test optional. And they said, you know, we believe that we can make a legitimate decision on an applicant without using testing. And so again, even pre-pandemic, there was a lot of chatter. Many schools were kind of watching the trends and seeing, okay, is this possible? How are they going to do it? Etc. I think you fast forward a couple years, the global pandemic hits, and really it was in response to simply lack of testing sites. Testing sites, like everything else, started to close, right? So students didn't have access to testing. So what we saw and what our response was on the institutional side was, we said, you know what? We're not going to look at them for the students applying for the admission cycle of 2021, 2022. We are going to go test optional. And so my institution did that, as well as just about every institution across the country. This was the first time you saw the Ivy League schools do it. This was the first time, again, it was really, really far reaching. I think at that point, we thought it was going to be maybe, 1 year type of pilot. This pandemic thing was going to last a couple months and everything was going to go back to normal. And, we would be back to testing. Fast forward, that didn't happen, right? And so slowly but surely, I think you saw lots of institutions start to expand their test optional policy. My institution, again, is one that did that. We said, okay, we're going to do it for 4 years. We're going to look at the data. We're going to see, and we know that we could admit really talented students. We're going to see how those students persist, how the students do, etc. I think since then, you've seen some universities, colleges, universities like University of California, for example, say, we actually don't need it. We are confident now that it no longer needs to be a part of our process. And so that's kind of where we're at now. I think this is a really interesting time because there are many institutions that are adopting these test optional policies permanently, but there are other institutions, MIT, for example, this time last year said, hey, we actually want the test back. So their institution that looked at their data in a different way and said, we actually think it's a really good predictor of not only who we can admit, but also who can succeed at the institution. I think that there are, certainly some clear advantages to test optional. We all know about test anxiety. I think we all know students that are brilliant, students that have fantastic academic records, and they sit down for a test and don't do well, right? And so often those students are pre-test in a pre-test optional world at that point would know that, because this was such an important piece of the admissions process, would remove themselves from consideration from applying to certain schools. And so the ability to be test optional, I think, has really opened up many more institutions and possibilities for a lot of students. My own institution and lots of other institutions also saw kind of a shift in who was applying to the university. We saw many more students from different backgrounds, low income, first generation students. I think students that had previously maybe saw testing listed and test scores and said, you know what, I may not be in that middle 50% and had stayed away. And so I've been really happy and pleased with what has kind of come out of this test optional space. Again, I think that it's a really interesting time, and that we'll see if even my own institution, if we are able to adopt it permanently as well. I think this is also an interesting time too, because there are coming on the horizon some really big shifts even in the standardized testing space. The SAT, starting in spring 2024, is introducing the digital SAT, right? So that will be a new test. It's a quicker test. It's about an hour shorter in length. They're saying it's more secure, more relatable. And so it'll be really interesting to see if more students again start to take tests as well and submit those testing. I think the other thing that we're seeing as well now is many students are now taking tests again, but we're seeing a lot of students that are the students that are submitting their tests at college universities are some of the top testing students, right? And so if you look at a university or college website and they're, listing the middle 50% of students that were enrolled, it's really those high test takers. And so you could say that the data is a little bit skewed because there are certainly students that are taking those tests and not scoring, in the highest percentiles. So again, I think it's a really interesting time. I think fairtest.org is a fantastic resource and website that you can take a look at that really breaks down test optional, test blind, and the different institutions and their specific practices, because there are some subtle differences with institutions across the country as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that issue of high scores on SATs that are submitted and ACTs came up on the last webinar that I did as well. So thank you for addressing that. So I think right now let's talk about all of the different types of institutions. And Ryan, I think I'll have you start us off to talk about choices with 2-year, 4-year, public, private, and then maybe all of you can join in and just talk a little bit about how the admissions process differs at those different types of institutions. And then we'll hear from you, Essie, about how graduate admissions is different from undergrad.
Great. So yes, there are so many different kinds of institutions out there. And for someone that is at the beginning of their college search, this can be overwhelming. So we're going to give you the basics now of what kinds of institutions are out there, and then kind of walk through those admission processes. So just like Julie said, there are 2-year schools, there are 4-year schools, there are public institutions, private schools, community college, teaching colleges, research universities. There's so much out there. So we're going to break it down. We'll start with community colleges. Community colleges are typically public institutions. They're sometimes called junior colleges, depending on where you are in the country. In Massachusetts, a couple of examples that you might know are places like Bunker Hill Community College or Middlesex Community College, Bristol Community College. These are typically institutions that offer certificates or associates degrees, and these programs are typically 2 years or less if you're attending full-time. Some students that go to community colleges will attend part-time, which will draw out the duration of those programs. But again, they're designed, if you're attending full-time, to be 1 or 2-year programs, certificates or associate degrees. Community colleges also offer 2-year paths to universities. So you can complete 2 years of your education at a community college, and then very often that 2 years will transfer to a 4-year institution. This is usually often a cost-saving measure because community colleges often cost less, and you'll be able to complete your first 2 years at the community college and the latter 2 years at a university. Community colleges typically have that lower sticker price, but remember we said that the sticker price isn't always the amount that a student pays, because at a community college, the institutions typically offer less financial aid. So the sticker price starts lower, but the amount of financial aid is typically less. And at community colleges, often you have the opportunity for open enrollment, which means that at a community college, anyone that has graduated high school, completed a high set, or completed a GED is typically eligible for enrollment at a community college, except for some of their selective programs, like a dental program or nursing program. For the most part, those community colleges are open enrollment. Then you've got state universities, places like where I work at Worcester State University, Westfield State, Bridgewater State. These are also in some parts of the country known as regional public universities because they typically serve their region, right? Most of the people that go to Bridgewater State are from Massachusetts. Most of the people that go to Fitchburg State are from Massachusetts. They serve their regions. State universities typically offer bachelor's degrees, which are 4-year degrees if a student attends full-time, and graduate degrees. These are typically master's degrees that can be anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 years or so, again, if you attend full-time. State universities typically have that lower sticker price and typically offer more financial aid than a community college, but sometimes less financial aid than your private schools. And state universities are what's considered mildly selective, which means simply graduating high school doesn't make you eligible for admission to most state universities. But if you've gone to school and you've done relatively well in school, then typically you're eligible. It's that mildly selective. You then have research universities. Sometimes these are referred to as flagship campuses, or flagship systems, depending again on where you are in the country. Locally, some examples of this are places like UMass, UConn, which is the University of Connecticut, UNH. These institutions typically offer bachelor's degrees, graduate degrees, doctoral programs, professional programs. They've got it all, right? Big institutions with lots of different programs. They're slightly higher cost, but typically offer slightly more financial aid. And they're also typically slightly more selective. So it's a little bit harder to get into the University of Massachusetts at Amherst than it might be to get into Framingham State University. The key with research universities, and I think it was Essie earlier that mentioned this, is there's a great deal of research opportunity. So whether you're at the University of Connecticut or you're at Brandeis, you have the opportunity to do undergraduate research as a part of your education, which is not always available at teaching colleges, where perhaps the focus is on the education that happens in the classroom. And then last but not least, you have your private colleges. Private colleges can offer just about any degree. So you've got private colleges like Dean that offer 2-year degrees like community colleges do. You have private colleges like Northeastern that probably offers every degree on the menu. And you've got lots of variation in between. Now, private colleges typically have that higher sticker price, but again, we're not going to pay too much attention to that sticker price because again, you're going to be eligible for more financial aid typically at those private colleges, bringing that down. And your selectivity at private colleges is all over the map. So where Northeastern and WPI might be highly selective institutions, another private institution, think of Eastern Nazarene University, might be a lower selectivity, but they're both considered private institutions. And again, they vary widely in their organizations and offerings. I mean, just here today, you've got big private institutions, you've got small private institutions, you've got research institutions, you've got technical institutions, and so your private schools vary quite a bit. And then, certainly we can talk about the different admission processes. I'll start quickly with the public universities. At your community colleges, you have to fill out an application, but as long as you fill out that application and provide proof that you've completed high school, you will be admitted to that community college. And again, it's high school, GED, or HiSET will get you admitted to that community college. At your state universities and your UMass campuses, you also complete an application, but it's not just demonstrating completion of high school. You will have to provide record of what your previous education was. What you did in high school, what you did at another college, and your admission decision is made based on those things. And for our private institutions processes, maybe I can turn it over to one of my colleagues to describe what the admission process is like at a private college. Like Jennifer, who's going to
Okay, here I am. I mean, it probably varies a little bit from school to school, but generally speaking, we are deadline driven. Lots of schools have the option of early decision, which is, or early action. You may have heard both of those where you would, we don't actually have EA, but I think Ebony does. So early decision is 100%, 100,000%, that's the school you want to go to, and you apply there and you say, if you admit me right now, I will just withdraw all my other applications. And many schools do that. Increasingly, a lot of selective colleges fill anywhere from 25% to half of their class through early decision. So it is a tool that many of those schools use. And then I would say, what we are looking for, and some of you are asking questions about this, again, it will vary a bit from school to school, but The more selective the school is, the more they are spending probably quite a bit of time combing through your academics. The more selective, the most selective schools, far more even so than Brandeis, are looking generally probably for 4 years of 5 academic solids. So that's going to be English, social studies, math, your foreign language, and hard science, and sometimes wanting to see 3 years of a lab science. So again, that's sort of at the more selective level. We would be looking for what types of classes are offered at your school. So does your school level classes? Is it college prep, or do they have honors? Do they offer AP? Do they have international baccalaureate? And how are you choosing to fill your academic schedule? Someone had asked, does a student with high testing kind of have the advantage over kids without testing? I think most schools would tell you they're still spending far more time looking at what a student did in 4 years in the classroom than in the 1 or 2 times they sat down for a test. So students who don't send testing are essentially signaling to a college, we would like you to put more weight on what I have demonstrated in the classroom. And what we would hope to see, at least at Brandeis, and my colleagues here can chime in, it is, well, if you're saying you haven't done testing because your transcript speaks for itself, then you've done the most rigorous things that were offered, and you've done, really generally pretty well on them. So we are looking for, I think, more materials and combing through them a bit more. And often we'll have 1 or 2 or more readers. And then sometimes at the end of a process, we'll even have a whole committee that will talk about the last group of spots that are eligible in the class and who we put into it. So it's a fun, but sometimes a little more cumbersome process at the selectivity level. And actually, I don't know, Emily, if you want to add anything about EA, or Northeastern is more selective even than Brandeis.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said was spot on. We also have an admission plan called Early Action, which is basically means you get your materials, your information to us early on those earlier deadlines. Our EA deadline is November 1st, and we'll get you an admission decision early as well. So you still have till May 1st to decide. It's literally just you're stepping in front of us in the earlier rounds. And so we're able to review you in the earlier rounds. But again, admissions decision nothing binding, still have to May 1 to decide.
And Julie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
We have all the flavors, EA, ED, regular, we'll take it all. Yeah, I think, again, that's another question that's great to ask at universities, and really digging in on that. Some schools will meet your full financial need if you apply early decision, others will not. So I think there's more layers to, if we've taught you anything in this webinar, is that there's a lot of questions to ask and a lot of resources to get those questions answered.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in right here just to this question about whether or not you get a better chance if you apply ED. You should be able to find those admit percentages. If you go looking for that school by school, you should be able to find it online. So at some schools, yes, at some schools, no, that totally varies. Like Julie said, from school to school, lots of layers, but that information should be discoverable.
Great. So Essie, I'll ask you to just touch on how graduate school admissions is a little bit different. And then, because we have a lot of, high school students and parents in the audience, are there things that they should be thinking about now that will help them with their long-term plan as well?
Yes. So I'm going to give some general information about graduate the application processes, and then also give a little bit more specific based on the programs that I've been working on. I know I said this before, I'm going to say it again. You need to do the research when it comes to graduate programs, because you really need to know what you're applying for, which programs you're going to be looking at, and what the processes are for each program, because they are very, very, very different. And so you also have to dig in to what kind of numbers the schools and the programs actually bring into their class. So UMass, for example, at UMass Chan, the T.H. Chan School of Medicine, we get over 5,000 applications, of which I'd say over 3,000 plus complete. We interview slightly over 1,000, and we bring in, as of last year was a class of 175. This year we're looking at 200. What does that tell you? It tells you that it's a highly competitive program. And so when you're looking at graduate programs, you need to do the research by going into different resources available. And a lot of graduate programs have professional organizations tied to them. So for medical schools, it's the AAMC. For law schools, it's LSAC. So LSAC. You can go into these organizations and figure out information about all the schools that are out there on the graduate level, so that you can then research their independent schools to figure out what is their acceptance rate, how many applications does the school get. I mean, everything is put together in one location for you to go. So the AAMC does that for us, LSAC does that for law schools, and then you have other organizations that do that, for example, nursing, PA, whatever the case may be. So find those organizations with the data, and these are regulated institutions, so you know that the information coming in is coming directly from the schools, and that way you can start making your decisions as to what you're going to do at the beginning. Now, if an application opens in, let's say, May, June, as it does for the medical schools, that does not mean that's when you start the process. You start the process about 6 months before that, because you want to make sure that you have your narratives down. Specifically, you need to start getting all your information that you've been doing in college to really prepare yourself for the application process. For those of you who have who are in schools that have advising programs like pre-health, pre-med, pre-vet, pre-law, all those, utilize those offices. They're the ones that are content experts in the process for applying to our programs. I cannot stress it enough, because the reality is, if you call an admissions office at a medical school and say, you know, I got XYZ on my in my GPA, and this is what I got in this class, and I got that in that class. Can you please tell me if I'm qualified to apply to your school? My response is going to be, thank you for calling us. I am so excited that you're interested in my school, but please make sure that you contact your advisor in your undergraduate school so that they can talk to you about what the process is. We are not allowed to advise. We cannot advise you individually on your academics. We will send you back to your advisors. We can talk about our programs. We can talk about the application processes. We can talk about all these other things. We just can't advise you individually. Now, there may be some other programs and other graduate schools that could do that, but I can guarantee you medical schools will send you back to your pre-health advisor. So just make sure that you are working with them. If you don't have a pre-health advisor in your school, then your advisor, your bio faculty member, or the NAHP, they are an association for pre-health advisors nationwide. They have resources for you as well. So just make sure that you keep in touch with folks that can help you, that guide you through the process. Now, you need to also know your applications. And I say that plurally because each graduate program is different. You have some traditional applications that you can just go onto an application, onto a school website and apply for a graduate program. If you're applying to medical schools, you have to go through what we call the CAS programs, the centralized application systems. So there's AMCAS, which is for medical schools. There's nursing CAS, which is for nursing schools. There is the LSAC, which is for the law schools. You need to find out, where do I apply? So that you can go ahead, set up an account and apply to those medical schools. And the nice thing about these centralized systems is just like the common application on the undergrad side. You can fill out an application and then you tailor it to the school that is being sent to, and then you send them out that way. AMCAS takes all the applications and they pre-verify. So you wouldn't even be sending us transcripts. The medical schools don't take a transcript of the application process. You have to input the information into AMCAS. AMCAS will verify your academics, and then when they have all the pieces that they require, and that's what we call the primary application. So some schools have primary applications. So then they will send it to the graduate programs, and then you will get a secondary application. That's why I say you start early. You will get a secondary application then from the school that is interested in you, and then you have to then think about deadlines. So if medical schools, for example, one school will say our application deadline with AMCAS is in October. You get the application opening up in May, June, and you're able to submit, let's say mid-June. You have to submit your application to AMCAS by October. And in our case, you have to set in your secondary application by December 1st. Once December 1st happens, you're done. And that's what happens with some other schools that use centralized application processes. So you need to know what the application process is for each program. So I'm talking about medical schools. Law schools might be a little different, where again, they may have a broader application deadline process for you. Each medical school is different. You need to know what the medical school deadlines are. And so you have to be highly organized with this, because if you're applying to 10 schools and they have different deadlines, you need to know which one's coming up so that you complete the application. I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten after the December 1st and saying, oh, it's my fault, I missed the deadline, can I submit? Unfortunately, the application is closed. I have 5,000 applications sitting there with people that did what they were supposed to do, when they're supposed to do. I'm not going to be able to interview all of them. I know it sounds harsh, but it's so sad because I have to find a way to get from 5,000 to 200. So other schools are highly competitive that way, and that's why you have to really know what it is that you're doing. Ebony, love what you were saying about the testing, because guess what? At graduate level, you also have standardized tests. Now, there are some programs where you could actually have your graduate tests waived. And that is exciting because, for example, if your undergrad has a graduate component and you are a student there, there are some schools that will waive your graduate requirement for, say, the GMAT in business. And I've actually worked on the undergraduate side for about 2 decades. And so I know I worked at an institution where we did that. And that was exciting for our students because they knew if they stayed, they could get a graduate degree in 1 year versus 2 years because they had all the prerequisites taken care of at the undergraduate side. And they didn't need to do the GMAT. Imagine that kind of combination. So again, if you are at a school that has graduate programs, check them out if that is something that you want to do. Don't just say, yeah, I've been here for 4 years, I want something different. Think about the benefit, because you could get a scholarship, you could end up not having to pay as much, and you're at your alma mater, you know the school, you know the faculty. You are high-fiving them in the corridor as they're walking down to class, so that is a great way for you to also look at graduate programs in that, does my school have one? Can I cut the time down by which I can get my graduate degree? So those are things to also think about as you're going on. But as I'm saying about standardized tests, for those programs that require them, again, you have to really think about what the test entails, how long the test is. Most of them are about 3 hours. For those of you who want to go into the healthcare profession and become MDs or physician scientists, I'm so sorry. The MCAT is 7.5 hours. And so folks say, okay, so when do I take the MCAT? My response is when you are ready. What does that mean? That means that you will sit down and you will study. For some folks, they will be studying months. They will be studying months and months. My philosophy is education is not a race. So take your time, study for the MCATs, take practice tests under real life conditions, and make sure that you are really comfortable with the material prior to taking the exam. Because the other thing you have to think about on the graduate level is, how many times can I retake the exam? Because what happens with the exams is that once you take it, the scores are transmitted over to the AAMC, they send them to us. So if you've taken it 3 times, guess what? We get to see all 3 scores. It's up to the school to decide how they then utilize the scores. Some schools may utilize all 3. Some of them may look at the highest score. We don't super score like we do with SATs and potentially your other standardized exams. We don't super score. So we will look at your individual sections. So a 7.5 hour for medical school, plus if you take them more than once, all that is coming out to your institution. You also have to figure out with the MCAT, GMAT, GRE, LSAT, depending on which test you're taking, how many times you can take them. Because I believe with some of the other standardized, you can keep on taking them, but with the graduate schools, you can take the MCAT 3 times in a year, but you can only take it 7 times lifetime.
Okay.
So if you have taken them if you've taken them more than 3 times, it also then shows a red flag. If you've taken them 5 times and we see all 5 and we haven't seen significant improvement, medical schools are like, you know, so you want to really, that's why I say, when do you take the MCAT exam? Take it when you're ready. So make sure that you really know what medical program you're applying to. You want to know, or what, graduate program you're applying to, what the rules are for their standardized testing, and then find ways to really make the process work for you. Prerequisites, really, really important. You need to be able to know whether you're applying to schools that require courses and that. So while you're in your undergrad, make sure that you're taking all the courses that are required for the programs you're looking to go to in the graduate school. Interviews, really, really important. We look at those evaluatively. I know for some undergrads, they may look at those informationally, but for a lot of graduate programs, because again, they're trying to get their numbers down in terms of potential applicants, an interview can sink you. Situational awareness is really important. So a lot of schools have now gone to virtual interviews because of the pandemic. And I know a lot of us are maintaining them because it gives greater access to students from different areas. But when you're doing a virtual interview and you're using a webcam and you have double screens and your webcam is over here and you are looking over here, situational awareness. So those are things that you have to think about now that we're in the age of Zoom. Is practice, number one. Figure out what kind of interviews are being used by the schools. Some of them are using MMIs, which are the multiple mini interviews like us, or the traditional. Practice both kinds so that you know what interview you're getting into, how to answer the questions, and then how comfortable you are with the processes. And again, I can't stress your health professional advisors, because they are the ones who are going to be helping you with your recommendation letters. Those are very, very important at the graduate level. If you're looking to go to medical schools, some medical schools do use what they call committee letters, which means that you have a board that interviews you, that works with you, and then they write individual letters, and then they write a joint letter that is sent to medical schools. Our school, for example, we prefer committee letters. Some schools are moving away from that and going to individuals. So read every single school, every single website, figure out what the recommendations are for your recommendation letters and make sure that you get the right ones in there. And then when you're in your undergrad, if you're struggling academically, I have always told my undergrad students when I used to work with them, there's no need for you to sit and suffer in silence. You have resources academically that can help you in terms of support services, tutoring, whatever the case may be. Utilize those. And when you're putting together your narratives, if you have a weaker start and a stronger finish because you made that transition, then you talk about it in your narrative. Build your narrative to show how you have improved as an individual. But utilize those. And if your shortfall is very steep at that point, consider post-bac programs, an in-between program before going to those other programs so that you are strengthening your academics. Talk to your advisors again about possibly enhancing your applications with post-bac programs, because that is something that folks actually do quite a bit of to really shore up their applications to graduate programs, especially if you're going to professional programs like law or medicine. And then finally, one of the things I want to mention in terms of thinking about when you're looking at your undergraduate life and you want to go into some programs like, for example, law or medicine, nursing, whatever the case may be, show that in your undergraduate activities. So volunteer. In medicine, we don't necessarily need you to volunteer in a hospital, but you need to show us that you're passionate about helping people, because that's what being in the healthcare profession is about, helping people. So whatever graduate program you're looking at, think about what the end result is going to be and make sure that you focus some of your activities on those on those pieces so that you are volunteering, be it as a tutor, be it in a food bank, that you are taking co-ops, that you're taking internships in certain fields, because that's what a co-op can do for you. It can be one of those things where you're like, you know what, I'm going to apply for this co-op because I really want to go into this area. Then you start the job and you're like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? Do I really want to be in this field? It helps you see the light. Or it could be one of those where you're like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So that helps you also when you're looking at the graduate way to figure out what pathway you want to take. And then you know if this is the right pathway for me. Prerequisite courses, I forgot to mention those. When you're applying to your graduate programs, make sure that, again, you're looking at schools that have prerequisite courses, required or recommended. If they're requiring certain prerequisite courses, you need to make sure that you have those courses, because without them, your application looks weak at the graduate level. And so somebody will have all of them, you don't. That then kind of puts you in the pool of, yeah, okay, maybe. And then it might never become for you. And that's where a postbac then may have to come into play for you to take those courses to make sure you're filling in the gap. And then there are some schools that say we recommend them, which means that you don't necessarily have to have them, but if you have space to take them, you could to bolster up your applications. They were talking about early decision and early action. Guess what? We have them too. But at the graduate level, if you're applying to an early decision program, it means that if you get in, that's where you're coming. You pull your applications from everywhere else. But if you're applying to early decision in a medical school, you're only applying to one school at that point in time. You cannot apply to other schools. It has to be that one school. Your decision will come before the application process ends. And so if you don't get into the early decision program, some schools will roll you into the regular application pool for consideration down the road. And then you're free to apply to other schools as well. But while you're active in an early decision cycle for medical schools, that's the only school that you're applying to. So those are things to think about as well. And I think I've hit most of them.
Well, thank you, Essie. And I know we have a lot of long-term planners that, come to MEFA. And so I think that was super helpful. Thank you very much for that. So I think we're nearing the end of our time, but Stephanie, I'll just reach out to you to say, are there any questions that we didn't answer? I know everyone, thank you. I know you've been answering questions behind the scenes, but are there any topics that,
Yeah, there's one out here, and thank you to the panel for answering the specific college questions that I didn't dare answer on your behalf. So this one I think is a really good one. How do colleges weigh involvement in sports or extracurriculars, volunteer work, working after hours as part of the application?
I don't know, not to call on, but Ebony, do you want to say a few things about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that, when we talk a lot about this holistic admissions process, right, we're looking at all these different pieces, and the involvement piece, I think, weighs in, is one of those factors. So it is, as much as, it's really important to what you're doing in the classroom, how academically prepared you are, but we're also looking really closely, trying to figure out what you're doing when you're not in the classroom, right? What motivates you? What kind of student are you going to be when you come onto our college campus? So looking to see, again, how are you spending your time? What have you been involved in? Again, I understand that students now coming out of the pandemic have certainly had some challenges and maybe didn't have access to, all the different sports and clubs and activities that, a student applying maybe 3 years ago had access to. And that's okay. We're never going to hold that against you. But we do really want to understand kind of what motivates you. Who are you going to be on our college campus? What kind of community member are you going to be? What kind of roommate are you going to be? We have lots of different opportunities on our college campuses, and we want students that are going to be engaged and involved community members. So I think it is a really important part of your high school experience.
Thank you. And anything else, Stephanie?
No, that was a good one. I guess maybe a good way to end. We had a couple questions that were answered, but they were good.
I'm sorry. I think one thing that we had wanted to mention was gap year, and I know I definitely want to put it out there. For those of you who are looking to go into graduate programs, gap year is something that is becoming more common right now, and it's an opportunity for students to defer for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 before applying to a graduate program. What we find with our medical school applicants is that a lot of them take gap years right now to enhance and to strengthen their applications. And so with a gap year, you can either work or you can take post-bac courses. You can do other things to strengthen your potential graduate application process, and that will help you down the road. So some people are afraid to stay out of school. They think they have to continue right from there. Take the gap year and study for your MCATs. You know, those kinds of things are opportunities for you to help you as you're looking at applying to graduate programs.
Thank you. And any other parting words, last tip, parting words? Or
Julie, the only thing I would add after all this great information is I bet we have a lot of parents and we probably have a lot of students on this Zoom tonight. And whether you are a parent or a student or a guardian or a caretaker or whatever relationship you have within your family, a lot of these decisions are made together. And so it is important, really important, for family members to talk to each other about what's acceptable for your family, right? Like, if you go to the other side of the country, is that going to break your mama's heart? If you settle in on that college that ends up being too expensive for your family, what's affordable, right? So having those conversations is really important. And having those conversations in senior year is really, really difficult. You know, all families struggle with the conversation about money, for instance. You know, some families, yeah, what's affordable and what's not affordable is a regular dinner time conversation. But the way I grew up, the family did not talk about money. Mama and dad did not share information with kids about how much was affordable. If that's the relationship you have in your family, that's okay. But when it comes to college, talking about affordability, talking about distance from home, talking about how often a student's going to be able to come home from college if they're homesick, you know, having those kinds of conversations early and doing so often and not doing them at the last moment as you're making that college decision is one of the things that I think all of us would probably suggest is prudent in sophomore, junior year before you get to that final decision.
I think that's very wise. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you all to all the panelists, and thank you to everyone in the audience and all your great questions. This has been wonderful. And just know that MEFA is here as a resource as you go through this whole process over the next year or so. So thank you again and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.